Coming in this Sunday from United States, where an assassination attempt has been carried out against former President Donald Trump. Leaders across the United States and the world have condemned the attack. Now, this happened during a campaign rally in Pennsylvania. Former United States President Donald Trump was hit by a bullet in his right ear, causing panic as blood smeared his face. Despite the alarming scene, he defiantly raised his fist in the air. The United States Secret Service assured the public of Trump's safety, confirming the shooter's death. President Biden has spoken to Trump after the incident. 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks has been identified as the alleged shooter in what the FBI and the Secret Service are calling an assassination attempt. The FBI, however, has not yet revealed a motive for this kind of an attack. The incident resulted in one death and left two others injured. Global leaders united in condemning this act of violence.
I've been thoroughly briefed by all the agencies in the federal government as to the situation, based on what we know now. I have tried to get a hold of Donald. He's with his doctors. Apparently he's doing well. I plan on talking to him shortly, I hope, when I get back to the telephone. Look, there's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this. And I want to thank the Secret Service and all the agencies, including the state agencies, that have been engaged in making sure that the people and we have more detail to come relative to other people maybe injured in the audience. I don't have all that detail. We'll make that available to you. I may be able to come back a little later tonight, but we'll put out a statement if I'm not able to if it's not convenient for you all. But the bottom line is that the Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it.
We have intelligence analysts as well, working from our field office in Pittsburgh, working feverishly to attempt to identify the individual who did this and any motives behind why this was done. Right now, we need the public's help. Anyone who was on scene, who saw anything, who identified any information, please report that to the FBI using either the phone number 1-800-CALL-FBI or online at fbi.gov/Butler. This evening we had what we're calling an assassination attempt against our former president, Donald Trump. It's still an active crime scene. As I mentioned, we have a number of agents on scene. We also are working closely with other federal agencies, our state partners, and our local police partners as well.
So we'll also tell you what the police investigation has shown so far. But Zaka Jacob is also joining us on the broadcast. Zaka, you've tracked international relations extensively. This act, I mean, all of us are shocked. United States is shocked. But what does it really mean, not just for U.S. politics, but for the world at large?
Oh, I think it's a huge story, no doubt about it. The fact that there was an assassination attempt on a former president. And for, I think, the first couple of hours at least, people were still trying to make sense of it. I don't think the FBI or the Secret Service particularly covered itself in glory, because the sense, at least from the rally, seemed to be, at least there was one eyewitness who spoke to, I think, BBC News, who had said that he had spotted this sharpshooter on the roof of a building, alerted the Secret Service about it, but they didn't respond for a good 10-15 minutes. They responded post facto. So there was criticism of that as well. Look, assassination hits on incumbent presidents or former presidents have happened very rarely in U.S. political history. We remember the most infamous one, which is, of course, John F. Kennedy way back in the 1960s. Ronald Reagan, when he was president, there was a hit on him. But in the modern day, in the last 20 years, in the last 30 years, we have not seen an attempted assassination at a sitting president or a former president. So I think the fact that you can see Trump there in those pictures with blood flowing out from the back of his ear, him sort of, continuing to keep his energy, his momentum, egging on the crowd who were shouting and chanting USA, USA. I think it's pretty outrageous that this has happened, and that too to a former president. Clearly, There will be a lot of sympathy for Donald Trump right now. A lot of people who may not particularly like him or his politics will now be viewing what has happened in Butler, Pennsylvania through very sympathetic eyes. What that may necessarily mean for the presidential race, we don't know, but likely we will see a bit of a Trump surge. Already, remember, he is leading Joe Biden in many of the critical battleground states, or the swing states as they are known, and Pennsylvania too happens to be one of the swing states. That's where this incident happened, in the outskirts of Butler. So this is again something that will see a Trump surge. Also, I think there's been some criticism of the Democratic administration, the Biden administration as well, the fact that the president took a long while to understand the gravity of the situation, to understand that this was a hit, an assassination attempt on a former president against whom he's locked in a very, very key presidential race, a race in which literally every day there's one or new member of the Democratic Party, or a funder, or a big donor who's coming out and saying that Joe Biden should step down. I guess this will further accentuate those calls because of the late response, or the seemingly late response of the administration.
Right. Siddhant and Akansha are also joining me. But Zaka, if I just would take a few more minutes of your time, just want to understand from you, this is a huge commentary on the Biden administration also, isn't it? Intelligence failure, how did the sharpshooter really get there? If you believe the eyewitness, somebody coming and pointing out that a sniper is seen on the rooftop and yet no action. And then that video, reaction of the sniper who finally brought down the shooter. He spotted him, and yet the reaction time gives the shooter allegedly enough time to pull the trigger at least 5 times?
Oh, absolutely. And I think a lot of questions will be asked of the Secret Service. Remember, all incumbent and former presidents, their security is covered by the US Secret Service. And that is the highest grade of security that's possible, not just in the US, perhaps anywhere in the world. The fact that there was eyewitnesses who are suggesting that some of the Secret Service personnel were alerted to the presence of this sniper on top of a roof, on top of the roof of a building nearby, and yet for a good 5-7 minutes they did nothing about it. I think that will definitely ask, and that definitely warrants some serious questions of the Secret Service. But more importantly, I think this puts paid to what Trump has been saying all along, that there is a system, a democratic system, which is sort of trying, which is out to get him, which is trying to suppress him and other conservative voices. So I think this will sort of further accentuate those politics. Trump has reacted on Truth Social as well as on Twitter, very brief comments where he has said that he thanks the Secret Service for protecting his life. He's also sad about the one person who's dead and the other person who's badly injured. But I think this will definitely be a turning point in the upcoming presidential election. If anything, it will put more pressure on Joe Biden to withdraw from the race, because he was seen as responding rather slowly and rather tardily to this big development, the news of an assassination attempt on a former president. But like both what President Obama said and what President Biden also said, there is no place for political violence, and which is why I think the story is so grave, that in the last 20-30 years, we have not seen an attempted assassination of a former president or an incumbent president. I think the last thing that I can think of was way back in the 1980s, the early 1980s, when Ronald Reagan was president and there was an assassination attempt on him. And of course, if you go back all the way to the 60s, JFK, that was the famous one in Dallas, where he was killed in 1963. But of late, in the last 20-30 years, given the kind of security detail that US presidents and former presidents have, remember, all former presidents, their families from Bill Clinton downwards, they are the living presidents of the US, the former presidents of the US, all of them have Secret Service cover. And yet, for this to have happened, and that too at a public rally for a former president with some kind of warning, surely, of course, it will be a matter of investigation, how credible that was, what the eyewitnesses said. But surely questions will be asked tonight of both the Secret Service and even the FBI.
Right, and we're waiting for FBI to tell us whether they're only seeing this as a political assassination, are they seeing it through the lens of terrorism, what is the motive that they are attributing. But Siddhant Mishra, for viewers just joining in, if you could just sum up the sequence of events as to what really led to this particular incident, what is it that FBI and Secret Service have managed to zero in on so far?
Well, Zaka has perhaps mentioned many points, but you know, it all happened at Pennsylvania campaign event of Donald Trump, and the time Trump was addressing the Republican supporters in Pennsylvania at that time, these bullets were fired at